We are here in the Northfield Arts Guild building at 304 Division Street South, Northfield, Minnesota, on July 22nd, 2008, to interview three women who've been very instrumental in the development of the Northfield Arts Guild. Myrna Johnson, Sue Shepard, and Marie Sadler. Hayes Scriven, Executive Director of the Northfield Historical Society, is handling the videotaping, and I'm Susan Vistendahl, Chairperson of the Oral History Committee of the Northfield Historical Society. I will be conducting the interview, but mostly deferring to Myrna Johnson, because she's played a lead role in the Arts Guild for many years, and she's also the Northfield Arts Guild archivist. Before the participants introduce themselves, let me say that we're in a historic building. On December 10, 1885, this building began a long history as a community center, starting out as the first YMCA building in upstate Minnesota. In 1915, the building was turned over to Northfield for public purpose, and in 1919, needed repairs and remodeling were completed. It was reopened as the community building for city business, assemblies, and organizations. On February 10, 1979, the Northfield Arts Guild had a gala to celebrate the opening of this building as the downtown headquarters of the Northfield Arts Guild. In 2009, the Northfield Arts Guild will mark its 50th anniversary and the 30th anniversary of using this building. So it's indeed appropriate that we're here now to speak about the growth of this organization. So now, we will let each of you introduce yourself, tell us about your affiliation with the Northfield Arts Guild, and then we will backtrack a little bit. We will have Myrna talk about the beginnings of the Northfield Arts Guild, and then we'll let you both chime in with your memories of the whole organization. So we're going to start over here then. You want to give your name and your affiliation? Okay.
I'm Marie Bjorn Sathram. I moved here in 1949, went to high school here and college, and then was gone for 5 years and came back in January of 1961. So Myrna invited me to be in the show. Was that 61 or 62?
Right around it.
Yeah. So and then moved away to work in Minneapolis in '85. During that time, I was among the first paid administrators here doing the program administration work.
Very active in theater.
Yes, and now live in, retired to Northwest Arkansas in the beautiful Ozark Mountains.
Okay.
So you forgot your first role, weren't you the wall?
No. Yes.
Yes.
Non-speaking, non-singing role.
In a black leotard.
And I'm Sue Shepard, and we came to Northfield in '67, and I immediately got involved in a musical way. And then my first show would have been The Song of Norway. And I was the first paid administrative assistant. I worked 2 hours a day over at where the theater is now. That was our main building, and housed everything there. Then I left in December of '85. Whew, I guess, yeah. And maybe was back for a couple of shows. And I'm now completely retired, live in Minneapolis and St. Cloud.
I'm Myrna Johnson, and I'm the one who is stuck in Northfield the whole time. I was around when they were putting those first committees together in forming what was first called the Northfield Arts Council. And a lot of people didn't like that, so I remember, you'll hear a lot of I remember, sitting up in the junior high auditorium in those seats, hardly dared to speak, but thinking, I hate that name just as much as all these other people hate that. But it evolved into the Northfield Arts Guild, and that's of course what it has been. And it was from the very beginning, although it seemed loose, but it was from the very beginning that we put together the theater, the dance part, the writing part, although we don't have a lot of that sometimes, although we do have more sometimes too. And then the visual arts and music. So we were a 5-pronged organization right from the very beginning. But now I'm going to tell a story. First, it was the summer of 1959, and doggone it, I wasn't here, but I had come from a theatrical background in that supposedly was what I taught in high school and what I was doing. I'd married in the meantime, had a child, Sarah, who was heavy duty in theater too. But in 1959, people decided that Marilyn Carver was having a nervous breakdown. And so Jean Kerman and some of these ladies that were very good friends of hers, and none of us worked in those days. I mean, if you were home, you took care of kids and you worked a lot, but you didn't work outside the home. Decided that Marilyn Carver needed something, so they put together a show, The Wilderness, that people are talking about now for the 50th anniversary show, one of the shows. And they secured Ralph Haugen, who was a professional teacher and professor at St. Olaf, and he was going to put that on. And I was in Chautauqua, New York, so wasn't in it, but was very aware of what was happening because Marilyn Haugen was my good friend, and that was Ralph's wife. Anyway, they put that on, and when I read the list of the people who were volunteers to sell the tickets, to sew the costumes, to do that, I mean, it's like whole columns of newspapers. I mean, there were so many people that were so eager to have something like this. And as Bob Phelps said in his talking about the first 40 years of the Arts Guild, if it had stopped there, we might have had a nice theater. Or in the fall when they started, Dean Warnholtz and John Mockestead and Dorothy Divers started teaching art classes, if it had stopped there, it would be an arts group in that. But it didn't stop there. It took those 5 parts to all go together and to form what we still have at the Northfield Arts Guild. Hallelujah. So that's my very beginning story, and it goes on from there. So, where do we go next now?
Well, I want to point out that each of these ladies has been president of the Northfield Arts Guild, and if I have my dates right, Myrna was president in 64 and 65, and Sue was president in 1983, and Marie in 1977, according to the information that we have. So you see, we do have ladies who definitely have history with this organization. So I think, Myrna, you can continue a little bit more on the beginnings, because I know that included in that beginnings is where we're going to find a place to perform then, ultimately.
Yeah. I think that right away the word committee comes to my mind, doesn't it, to yours? I mean, we had committee for this, a committee for that, a committee for whatever. I remember being first on the committee for the theater, so that was separate. But I want to point out that governing committee business at the very beginning is what we talked about before. Somebody always represented. We weren't moneymaker people. I mean, there was no one poorer than the Johnsons in Northfield. And as far as money and boards are concerned, but if you belong to a committee, like I did the theater committee, then I could also be on the big board, or was appointed to the big board, we called it, and would have that. So we would have something. And every board meeting in those early days was a report from the dance committee, the music committee, the theater committee, and blah, 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 on down the line. The reason we knew that, well, the first show was at St. Olaf in the basement theater, board basement. Can't think of the name of it now, but that's what it was, where it was. They taught art classes at Carleton and at St. Olaf. There was no place. Right away, everyone said, we've got to have a home. So a committee was formed, and the committee decided that a good place was the church building at 411 West 3rd.
Danish Lutheran.
And they were in the process of building this new place, St. Peter's, out here. And so the committee worked with the group from the St. Peter's, and the Arts Guild bought that church with the stipulation that the steeple comes off. And it was $6,500, $6,500. And we got mortgage in 60, 61, and all the articles of incorporation and all that jazz. It went with stuff that I don't.
Nonprofit
Yeah,
designation.
yeah. Mhm. And to go to the church that we had a home. And that's where the board meetings were, that's where we taught dance, that's where they had, they made not Charlie horses, what do they call them, those horses that they have around for painting and
Easels.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, they're upstairs.
Yes. And you sit and have the easel,
Yeah.
right?
I can do that, yeah.
And that's Pat Lampy's wonderful woodcut of the topless showplace.
Have you ever seen that?
Have you ever seen that woodcut? Oh, it's
Oh, yeah, that is.
We even had it put on T-shirts, I think.
Yes, oh, yes, we did, and it was on several programs that we had, so.
And the mortgage was burned in.
And 69.
So it didn't take long.
No, so we did.
You were here.
I was there for the burning.
You were there.
I came in '67. Yeah.
Okay, what do you remember about the early time in St. Peter's? I remember reading about the arts fairs and so forth. It's really started there?
Yeah, well, the arts fair pieces of art were clipped on clotheslines all over the church and with clothespins. But I remember it was a very busy building because when there was dance, all of the chairs had to be put back on the chair racks. When there's theater, all had to be put out again. And then I remember sewing pillows so that we had pillows on those hard chairs. There were mirrors on one side for the dance classes. The basement was just one big open room, and in the kitchen was an electric kiln that Dagmar Tisdale felt we really needed. And we truly needed it, but it could not be fired when we were rehearsing. The fumes were ghastly. That's the first time I ever plastered cracks.
Oh, right.
There was a big crack on the way down the basement on the wall, and
bathrooms.
yeah,
We cleaned everything.
we cleaned everything.
I remember being shouted at about down there because I thought that we needed some kind of a closet to have props and that sort of thing. And so I had some volunteer build a wall that's still there. Build a wall and make that area, which now is bigger because of the addition that we did in 90-something. But to have a place for props and that. And they were so upset with me, the art people were, because I had cut down on the area that they were to have for doing something. And I felt very foolish, but I was very glad that I had done it because it's still been a problem ever since. So that was way back when. It was a true church basement. It had an area where it had a window that you could go up and serve, a counter. And that, on the other side of that is where we would rest the mirrors that we had for makeup, because that was our makeup room.
But at the other end of the kitchen, you go in the kitchen here, and at the other end was a hole in the floor, and the ladder is how you got up to stage left.
Stage right and stage left.
Right. Well,
there
there was
was
a stairway
stairs.
on one side of the stage, but the other you actually had to go up a ladder.
So you hope your entrance wasn't real quick.
But it was when Bob Moulton got it.
Oh, yeah.
What were some of the early productions that from that period? Do you remember?
Well,
In the theater itself, the first one was A Curious Savage, which is kind of popular again nowadays. We did Gay 90s Review, we did Moments in Great Theater. Oh, I'll have to tell about that. We did, it was so interesting because the St. Peter's people wanted, like a lot of people do when you sell a place, you want to have it all painted up and nice for your new people to move in. And so the St. Peter's people were very, very conscientious about painting the whole inside of the upper part of the theater. And much to all of our chagrin, they painted it pure white, absolutely pure white, which is the worst color that could have been for a theater. So those first shows that we did, it was like murder. Everything was white Quite great
reflecting
elements, yes.
stage lights.
But the great moments in theater, we did have a bar across, and we had lights really close on people, and that worked. And then we started painting, and I in the upper part of the proscenium, the original proscenium, I was those first years very careful about putting the color that the inside of the stage was going to be. Sometimes it was blue, sometimes it was black, sometimes it was green, whatever we wanted to do, we could paint it. And I would be sure that there was a swish of paint up there. But that's of course long since gone. But that was one of the things. And we redid the theater. I think it was 1980. It was right after moving down here in '79 that Clint designed the colors for.
Yes, and we spray painted the inside of that in a long 12-hour day or something like this.
Yeah.
That was
And those are still the colors that are there.
Now, all three of you were very active at the time of the 1979 move down here, so maybe you can tell about that, each of you, how your involvement was. I know there was a large gala celebration that we should talk about that we had and so on.
Well, I think a lot of credit goes to Marie, who found a very important paragraph that the YMCA had given to the city. Go for it, Marie.
We have this 8-page thesis written by Kurt Jeffrey, Department of History, Carleton College. I do believe he was president of the board at the Historical Society and was very active there over the years. Written December 1978, so I think he actually found I did go and double check the historian's citation in the news, Northfield News. Well, we've been talking. We needed the theater to ourselves. Really, so I walked by this building and I'd heard they were talking about, well, since my husband was the architect partner at SMSQ, they had designed the, what do they call it now? Police center or wherever?
Safety
Center. Safety
Center.
Center. So I knew that they were going to get out of here. So I just walked up here and talked to the chief of police, and I said, well, tell me what you are doing and what you think should be done with this building. So that really was the first, one of these walk down the street and it hits you out of the sky. So I got the past presidents and the current board together at my dining room table. How could we make this happen? And so then, actually my mind lives in the future, so you can correct me at any time, but not so good with the past. We had a very definite plan on how to, solicit the votes of the city council. They were individually contacted and lobbied to, and pointed out that the original gift to the city said it had to be used for public good. It could not be sold to the dollhouse for their warehouse. And there was another restaurant that was interested. So I think that that moral sensibility got to the city council. And not only that, they gave us some money in those first years too. So it actually didn't take so long, did it?
No, it was important to become a line item on the city budget.
We tried to do that. It didn't last long.
It didn't last long, but there was something brilliant about the opening gala. The restrooms here were 100 years old. So we got permission from the library that people could walk across the street. This is in February, and women had their dancing shoes on, and the city council were invited to come, and they had to either wait in line here or walk across the street. And the next month, we got money from the city to put in those restrooms.
Yeah. Very good. Part of it was that they were to be the public restrooms, so that way.
Is that still true, do you think?
No, I don't think so.
Oh.
No, they go over to the Historical Society.
But this Queen Anne bulge here on the outside facade was pretty rotten. So again, Clint gave his services. I remember picking those colors. If Yeah, we talked about that one, and we went by some other building in town that still had the original colors.
This was all plain glass.
Is that what it was at
Yeah,
that
when
time?
we moved here.
Uh-huh.
And we bought, and you had graphs of that, and we bought a piece, like $40-some.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Yes. But I suppose it was Arnie Nelson, contractor, he probably gave us a good deal to replace most of the exterior boards there, and then the painting on the outside. And then there were all other things, the roof
The
leak.
floor in the basement was really a dancer's dream because it was suspended. You know, and Tony Sostek said, you know, most places that you dance on are concrete with wood on the top. And she loved this. And we got the mirrors for her, and then the bar, B-A-R-R-E, she did not want metal, and metal is cold. And she didn't want those little banisters that lumberyards were selling. So we went to Washington School, which was closed by that time, and unscrewed the banisters at Washington Elementary School and installed them as the bars
We
downstairs.
carried our own screwdrivers, and we couldn't find anybody to ask permission. We just did it.
Did it.
Walked out of there.
But 20-foot banisters.
I know we did one, for example, the one set, the Oliver set, that I wanted a ladder across,
A wooden
a wooden ladder. I didn't want a metal ladder because we were going to have these boys going across and making this configuration. The neighbors had a wooden ladder on the outside of their garage, so we trotted over there, and it was okay. We could have used it, but we sawed it in two. And we
We
did.
never got caught.
No, never.
No, they're going to find us.
Well, I should point out that the Northfield Historical Society was also helpful, and the fund drive was by Bill Palmquist and Marie Satham, according to the information I read, and it said you raised $45,000. So I'm sure that was a big help at that time. That was $45,000 back in '79. And then in 1988, that's when the city sold the building to the guild. So within short order,
Was it
I think it was $1 according to the records.
That's what they paid for it in
Yeah.
1918.
You know, this will be in the archives, but what's interesting to read is what the activities of the guild were in '77 and what they were in '79. They tripled, and the budget.
Yes, at least.
I think it'd be nice to have an interview with just statistics, or at least an accompanying, because look at here, how many plays? 323 through 2007. That's a miracle for this size town. And that means how many audience could you even, or more important, how many actors have been on that stage? That is incredible.
This is probably a good point for Linda to talk about the Northfield Musical Theater that was born.
Yeah, and the four of us sat down there. You took a picture. Dick was in on that too, Dick Cantwell. And that
We
was
needed a man.
Sue's. Yeah, we thought we needed a man.
Are you editing this?
Well, we did.
It was certain things happen, and everything starts to gel. Marie was getting her master's, and she wanted to take a voice and movement for the stage workshop with Bob Moulton and Vernon Sutton at the University of Minnesota. So we went up there for 1 week in '72. I came across the grade, my grade transcripts. And then we came home and said, why aren't we doing this all the time? This is so exciting. It's like Mickey Rooney and There's a Bar Mitzvah.
Yeah.
So the three of us were talking, well, why not? And we put together a business plan, the whole thing, decided on the shows, then sent it to Vern Sutton to say, Vern, what do you think? What are we doing wrong? And he said, this is great. And he came down and directed the first show.
And was in it.
And that was Boyfriend, a bit of musical fluff that I still like to see.
Yeah.
The middle show was a little show. Is that like
No.
You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown. And then the third one was Oliver.
The ladder.
The ladder. But by this time, I think we'd had the Guthrie people down for some technical assistance.
We had workshops.
They were floored that the budget for the sets was $11.
Yeah.
And we had facades.
Maybe we should explain this as a full resident company rather than something the Northfield Arts Guild was saying.
We
right?
tried for that, yes.
Yeah, we tried to, we figured the artists were all getting paid if they wanted to by hanging their paintings and saying $40 or $50 or $100 or $120. And we were doing all this work all the time for nothing.
Well, I think it was more, we wanted the chance to be more professional, have a chance to do our work for 3 weekends in a row, rather than the usual one weekend. And so we had people sign contracts. They were really quite specific. No drinking. Before, yes, not afterwards. So,
Well, we wanted to do musicals.
pure music.
Pure musicals, and I still say, as a director that did quite a few things back in the old days, I was so impressed with how musical we were in Northfield. I mean, we all were. We were good singers. We'd been trained. We, blah 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 and blah blah blah. There was a lot of good singers, and but not so good at acting.
Let's not mention dancing.
No, we did it anyway.
Yeah. But thank goodness for somebody like Tony Sostek, who helped us with the dancing, but then also somebody like Bob Moulton. He could make you look like a dancer if you never had another piece of tap on your ear,
George M., shuffling off the Buffalo. We did the Buffalo. We'd been taking tap dancing for 3 months or something like this. And we did the shuffle. So you go across the stage, you go down the steps through the kitchen, up through that hole on the ladder, and shuffle again. And there was no stopping. Everybody.
Yeah.
You mentioned Bob Moulton, and I know he was involved with Jesse in 1976, and there's talk that we might do that again for the 2009 year. So maybe you could talk to that a little bit about Jesse.
That was 1976, and America really benefited from all of the money that was put into the arts in preparation for the bicentennial celebration. And we got this grant thanks to Marie. And Bob and Maggie Moulton had a book called The Life and Love of Jesse James that had been done at the Stagecoach. And so they used that book, and Vernon Sutton did the lyrics. He was the lyricist.
Now he's from the University of Minnesota.
Yeah, and so was Bob Moulton.
Oh,
He was,
okay.
yeah.
And then Bill Huckabee was the composer. And it was composed for us. I started it, you guys can finish it.
Donna Paulson arranged it.
Yes, and she could, I mean, they had, Huckabee had a single lineup, but the melody was and that sort of thing. And Donna had to fill it all in. And we did get a grant, 10 years later then, to have her write it all down. So we do have it down. But at the first it was, and then Frances, she was
Kirshner Long.
yeah. She was the ma in that, and she was to have a solo. But the solo was not finished until the night before we did the final dress rehearsal. And
She went over with the lyricist and the composer, and the three of them wrote the song the night before, and she memorized it.
Up to that point, we'd come to that place in rehearsal, and Vernon would say, well, this is when Frances sings Climb Every Cactus.
or whatever.
It was a darling show, and
It is.
really written for us, for specific people, because they worked with us enough to know what we could do.
And it's still available in the museum shop down there.
This is,
Yes.
and
It should be patented. It should be something that
Yes.
Samuel French would offer for theaters all over the
do
country.
you know that I got a phone call?
No, did you?
In Arkansas, we lived there 8 years, from a member of the Jesse James ancestor gathering. They got together every year. They were getting together in Texas. Do you know about that?
Well, Hastings.
Yes. So they wanted a copy of the show, so Vernon sent them.
Yes, I
a
did.
CD.
That's right.
But I never heard back.
No.
Did he ever pay?
You should invite them up for 2009. They can have their reunion up here.
Yeah, okay. Hayes?
I don't know anything about their reunion.
No. know. Well, it was. Now I remember that.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. 20 years after it, then they were asking for that.
Yeah. I will mention also in 1998 there was the premiere of Donata's Gift with books and lyrics by Christine Kalman and Kalman. Opera, the first was Menage's Mall and the Night Visitors in 1967, and then in 71 you had an all-female opera in Carlton Chapel. So
Yeah.
there's been quite a bit of
Everything.
music beyond.
That was recorded and just recorded. I don't know.
I have only an LP of Suar Angelica. I wish someone would do that for me.
Well, one other thing
Yeah.
that we should discuss is the children's operations and the children's theater, and I know Marie was involved with the children's shows. In the 60s, they had something called pillow parties and the Hayride Theater. So, maybe you could talk about that.
Are we running out of
We're still good. Got a good 10 minutes on this tape, so.
All right. I did pillow parties because, as Sue mentioned, we always had to take up all the chairs when there was dancing and put them back if we wanted people. Little kids, all we had was a flat floor. We didn't have any raised part to see anything, and we needed children's shows. So the ingenious thing of having them bring their own pillow and sit on that. So we'd have a few chairs for grandmas that couldn't get down on the floor as easily, but the kids would all sit on pillows in the theater and watch the shows. That's why they were called pillow parties.
Were they also children actors?
Sometimes a combination. I tried to do a combination of that.
But I think the other ingenious thing was that all these musicals had great big choruses, and they often were family groups. I mean, if that could happen today, I mean, my children were in a music band because I was in that show, and
Brigadoon, the labels, and that.
All
Yeah,
of
yes.
it.
and Showgirls would have many family members, and so and they all got to know the adults, and we got to know the children. I don't think that happens.
Not as easily, no.
What was the Hayride Theater?
It was fun. That was Marilyn Carver. She would do that, and she actually got a tractor pulled hayrack, and she would take it to Way Park and Central Park and one other place.
Over up in St.
Yeah.
That's
No, that's Way Park. That's Way Park. Anyway, she would take it around, and the kids would act on that. They did Jack and the Beanstalk and Cinderella and some of those. That was the age that my daughter Sarah was involved, and Lucy Vernon and those little kids like that.
And then you had coffee houses. When the early 70s, when coffee houses became very popular, coffee with cinnamon and garlic and whipped cream, and we would sing.
Yes, and
Variety shows.
back in the days when I dared to make costumes, which is really funny because I would buy these yards and yards of taffeta, because it was cheap, and make strange costumes.
Strange costumes.
And then in 1991, the Young People's Summer Theater Program, which became the Young People's Theater Workshop, where you have 2 3-week sessions.
That patterned after St. Olaf. St. Olaf had done that first.
Art summer school.
We did do that, but then they took over the big things, so they had much more going on.
Well, they had the nice theater too.
Well, I understand that Sue knows about the Northfield Chorale that went from 1979 to 88 that you might be able to talk about.
Do you know, they just kind of did their own thing.
Yeah.
We helped them get going, a dress list, a little support, place rehearse, but
That's the same way with when the boys' chorus with Bob Swanson. Cora wanted support from the Arts Guild. It didn't always work. So, see, there are 16,000 million things that went on in those days, Sue. So
That was Connie Sansom and Robert Schultz.
She started it, but I don't think she hung around.
No.
Okay. And 84 I had was when it started operating under NAG. It started in 79.
the chorale.
The chorale. Right?
Yeah, but see, that died too. Programs can die, and that's life. And then you do something else. We had that with moneymakers too. Beaux-Arts balls and Art
Silver
Silvers.
is still going.
Oh yeah, but there are some things that are still going, and of course the Arts Fair is one of them.
And the Rose Arts Ball was the thing to go to.
Yeah.
It was the social event of the year.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And the orchestra, that's
Yeah.
still going 29 years, and
Right.
I feel like I'm a mother of them.
Yes, actually, in the history, Paul and Miss Joe says that he first spoke to Vernon Johnson about it, and then to Murray and Sue added their support, and Beatrice did as well.
Go
We
for
did
it.
our administrative support.
Yeah, and in 2000, they estimated 700 musicians had been involved in 20 years.
Isn't that
Yeah.
amazing? You got to add up your cast list.
Yeah, well,
Yeah. You know, Emily, we were saying earlier, from Jessie, is now the director of Walt Disney Concert Hall in LA.
She acted on our
she was
stage.
She was our C.
The first Jessie. So Maria has lots of
Lots of-
mentees that have made it famous in the drum.
Now, besides Jesse, I have Andrew Carter and Joan Wolfe's poems put to music by Carolyn Jennings, and so
I'd like to see that.
you had quite a few specials, let's call them, that involve Northfield
Well, and
talent. I suppose.
what the other one that Carolyn did, the animal
One day,
Menagerie.
one Friday.
Oh,
One Friday?
Something like
Menagerie.
that. Yeah. Well, no, it was, I mean, she
The monkeys,
Yeah, the
based on
monkeys.
African folktale.
Yeah, that was done in our theater. I know Ruth Lakeville was costume person for that.
So there's so much talent in Northfield.
Oh,
that,
yeah.
You take advantage of it, and you were able to do that.
This used to be a stage right here, and we would do Sunday afternoon musicals sort of thing. And one time it was sopranos, a dime a dozen.
Yeah.
We had 12 sopranos.
Sopranos, and each soprano got to sing their favorite war horse. And then Kassler was commissioned to write a song
For 12
for
sopranos.
sopranos.
I bet that hurt their ears.
Yeah. The people came. They came.
All right, we're going to speak a minute now about the educational aspects of the Northfield Arts Guild. And Marie was the first paid program manager in '78, and she initiated art summer program classes for children in the preschool arts program, now called Kids Arts, I believe, but at least it was in 2000. So Marie, maybe you could talk a little bit about that, the education, the arts.
Here I have a report in front of me from 1979. In art, there were 17 classes scheduled and 156 students. In children's art, there were 13 classes scheduled, 113 students, plus workshops of 75 people attending. In music, we had fall and a spring musical, we had recorder class, we had a jazz, must have been piano jazz, I suppose, and we gave recitals. There were 208 people in ballet and modern dance with 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8 students. 10 drama productions. And plus we took a show to Menominee, Osakas, and St. Olaf College, and a show to Laura Baker School. Arts Fair, there was one out too. Holy smokes, we loaned costumes to Kenyon, Saratoga, the high school, St. Olaf Minnesota School for the Deaf. Oh my gosh. Plus preschool classes of music and movement and poetry class. So statistics for fiscal year 84 lists 41,660 people participating or consumers. 775 in the classes, almost 2,000 with the Imagination Celebration. Do they still have that? Public school art just going here.
Oh, yes.
The drama season saw almost 4,000 people. NMT season is another 2,300 on top of that. I mean, this town is still small, isn't it?
Yeah, and now say what you said before in between, as you're doing that.
Oh, I think the remarkable thing about the Northfield Arts Guild, that from the beginning, the mission has been to be participants, not to be passive consumers. And these statistics indicate that for just 1 year. I think we were trying to make the case in '85 that we were a public service downtown here, sort of a cornerstone for the downtown, in fact, with 41,660 people using this building and using our program. So I think we've done it and we continue to do it.
I do too, and I think that report was prepared for that fund drive, and for the first time in history, we got corporate leaders here in this room for breakfast at 7:30 in the morning. There were more than one breakfast, but it was a very select invitation list to get to these corporate and businessmen who were the movers and shakers in town, that they could realize the economic impact of the arts field.
And one aspect of the participation of all these people is that they also have the gallery and the shop in order to display their works, and also for people to buy their works. And so we probably should mention that gallery community that was established in late '78 after the City Hall became available, and your husband was a consultant on the building.
Heck no, he built those
Yeah.
display
Yeah.
boards.
Yeah.
He not only did the drawing pretty pictures, he did the hammering too.
Yeah, I was thinking too when we were talking before, and I'll insert that here because it fits, but this Clint that we keep talking about belongs to her. He was so good.
Sets, he did this
Well,
wonderful
fundraising.
drawing of that.
And he did the, he was one of the ones when the arts fair was out in the Central Park, and we had to form the places for the artists to hang their wares. He would go and get plywood and 2x4s, and they would set them up, and there are pictures of that around. So, you know, nowadays they all bring their own tents and everything like that. It's so different. Yeah.
And this wonderful piece he did for when we raised money for the back edition, the Myrna Johnson edition of the Arts Guild. This costume storage and decent access to the stage. This piece is his too.
Yeah.
In fact, you should copy that. And in fact, did you know that the Northfield Historical Society logo of your upper, you use? That's his.
The logo that we use today.
In fact, what year was it I helped the Historical Society raise $75,000?
Oh, yeah, and Mary Lou Street was in on that too.
Yeah.
But you were there.
So that material for that fund drive.
Yeah, they borrowed you.
No, heck no, I was going out as a consultant.
Oh, that was.
I got paid.
Oh.
Finally, I got paid.
Yeah. Okay.
But I wanted to mention get back to the arts fair for just a minute, so that people realize that how it transitioned, how it grew from being in the back of the church, and the cakewalk, you were saying, cakewalk at one point, and hanging up the paintings and so forth. And then it went to Central Park in the 60s. There was a food booth operation connected with that.
Yes.
Big food booth.
Yeah.
Joni Alverson and her
Jeannie
Jeannie
But somebody closed them down.
Yes, because of the food business.
The health committee closed them
What
down.
a bummer. Yeah, go on.
Same
Susan.
And then in '67, it was promoted as part of the Defeat Days, or vice versa. Defeat Days came in with you.
Because see, those early days, the fair had been like the very last of May or the first part of June.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then in the '70s, it moved to the riverfront. It's been back to Central Park, and then back
And
to
then
the
finally
riverfront.
back. And when the bridge was over there, we had banners that hung from the bridge when
That's
that
great.
Fourth Street.
That wonderful bridge, the metal bridge.
You know, the one idea Marie had that did not come to fruition was to have a barge in the middle of the canyon and have chamber music out of that barge.
Yeah.
It still could happen.
Well, maybe.
They have to handle.
Yeah.
You know, when the gallery did open downstairs, it was the volunteers that kept it open.
Yeah,
Just
Sue organized
numerous
150
volunteers.
volunteers.
There's still volunteers today.
And then once a year, we would have a thank you of some sort.
Yeah.
The speaker one time was Joan Mondale, another time was Joan Grow.
Mhm.
And people from around the state, women who had made a difference came and talked about it.
Okay, what else, Sue? Susan?
The important thing, I guess, is that you would want to stress how it's lasted. I mean, this has been a very remarkable organization that it has lasted with all of its prongs, as you started out by saying. That's probably the biggest tribute to the founders, that they had the vision to know that they could succeed, and they would succeed. If you want to say anything more on that.
Well, it's like having children or grandchildren
Do so well.
Yeah, it is.
And Myrna mentioned to me something about the fact that you three would work together on a daily basis as volunteers. And so we could maybe end with that, because that's
I told
important
Susan the other day,
story.
I said that I saw these two people every single day of my life. And quite often on Saturday and Sunday, because we were involved in the theater. It wasn't just that I would come up here, try to tramp up those stairs, and where the office was in the first place. We'd go over things, or we'd check on things, and yes, every single day.
We'd sit on Sue's porch,
Yeah, that was
Nevada
nice.
and Fifth Street, and talk,
Everything.
plan.
Drink beer.
Murder has never had a drink.
You know, the one thing that we did do, I think, that was really far up, and that was to take tap dancing lessons.
In our late 30s.
In our 30s.
40s for me, because I'm that much older than they are. So here I was in my 40s taking tap dancing. And I've got a granddaughter, and I said, if you don't do one other thing for Grandma, take tap dancing lessons.
And of course, we had Tony Sostek, who could laugh with us. I mean, she was wonderful.
Yeah, we had wonderful times, and I'm sure they still do. But it was really a thrill to be a part of all of that, and we thought so too.
At the time.
I mean, we did. It isn't something that we just did and made do with it. We loved what we were doing, and I think it shows in what you can read wherever you're looking, as far as the library or my archives up there or wherever.
You knew it was a special time.
Yes.
Yeah, it
And
was.
special vibes here.
Relationship. Yeah, I hated it. I hated them when they moved. I hated it, and there I was left by myself.
Oh,
Yeah.
I have to say one more thing about Myrna's creativity, because we actually did a very dramatic presentation of giants in the earth.
Oh yeah, we did.
With, the wind and the grass and everything. And this woman just kept coming up with just great ideas for performance.
very cool.
So we had fun.
So thank you for letting us talk.
Thank you all.
Well, I've got a question for you. You guys were in on early stages. Is the arts guild today what you thought it would be back? When you're thinking what it would be in the future, what's your impression of how it is today?
Yeah, I think that. I think it's fine. I think it's healthy. I think it still has 5 prongs sticking out. I think they're doing well. I think they don't. No, this isn't going to come out right, but I'm not sure that people nowadays totally appreciate what we went through. I think you can't know that unless you were there doing it.
You mean the hardships, the
The
space?
hardship, well, and the space and the
no
moving
money.
and the no money and all that sort of thing. And I know they're struggling. They are struggling with it nowadays, so to speak. But I think that we were lucky to be a part of that excitement of it. I think sometimes maybe these are the doldrums, and I think maybe hopefully 50 years will jack everybody up. But I mean, we had a wonderful time, and yeah, I think it's still okay.
In thinking about organizations, when they start out, there's a lot of energy, a lot of synergy, and a lot of creativity. And we have, the Arts Group has lasted, but it's gone like this. And what organizations need to worry about is being so administrative bound, that there's the bureaucracy of an organization that doesn't let the nitty-gritty, dirty, scruffy little creativity keep growing. I think you just have to keep the doors open to all kinds of ideas, and they may seem far out and ghastly, but that's what happened with the Arts Guild. I mean, people came in and did their chorus, or they came in and they did their poetry, and it may last or not, but organizations do go in waves. Marie, do you have anything to say?
Well, I'm thrilled that it's still here and appears to be doing well.
Even if you did move away.
It took 5 years to get over the sadness of leaving that theater while I was working in Minneapolis. I didn't believe it was that much part of my life, but it was. But I appreciate it, and I think that times change, so the institution better change too.
Yeah.
Well, it has endured 50 years, celebrating in 2009. And we'll may not be around for the 100th anniversary, but I have a feeling that they will have the 100th anniversary. I think it will stick.
Have you lined up Vern to direct Jessie?
But I will. If they give me the word, I will, because we want.
I'm not going to be a wild girl.
Oh, you're not.
You're wild anyway.
I think I can still do Kate. Yes! the madam.
Oh, okay, yes.
Because that can be, she can be any age.
Yes. Another makeup.
Whoa.
Well, anyone who is listening to this DVD then will have to put that on their calendar.
Yes.
So they can come see Myrna Johnson as a madam.
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you.
Well,
Susan,
thank you. And thank you, Hayes, for your, do you have any more questions?
No.
That's a dare. It would never end.
And we're back.
Okay.
Well, just an important postscript is the important part that Maggie Lee in the Northfield News played with the Arts Guild. She was our #1 supporter and gave us lots of ink. And
You know what? Okay, now start back over. Okay,
a
sorry.
postscript to this is the importance of Maggie Lee and the Northfield News in supporting the Arts Guild. And Maggie felt this was the perfect organization in town because it wasn't just Carrollton, it wasn't just St. Olaf, it wasn't just Main Street, it wasn't the farming community, it was a place where all of those diverse people could meet and sing and dance and paint, and their kids could come and be a part of something that was really community-based. So in terms of this building, this historic building, this is what we were to do, serve the public for the community good.
Okay.